So again, today's short little webinar is a little sneak peek basically into a training on doing small and medium-sized building retuning. So taking commercial buildings and adjusting them for operational efficiency. So first, what is retuning? It's really just about it's a systematic process for finding and correcting operational issues. And the whole point is to go after those low or no cost kinds of issues that are going to be fairly easy to repair. A lot of times it's just good maintenance practices. It's changing schedules or the operation of a piece of equipment. And there's two basic approaches that P&L put together, and what we're delivering as a training is based off of working with P&L, the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. And they really have two approaches, and one is a prescriptive approach, and the other one is a very data-driven approach. And the prescriptive approach is very much more hands-on, inspecting the equipment, much more applicable to small buildings or small, medium-sized commercial buildings where we're dealing with individual package-type equipment. And the data-driven one is really meant for larger commercial buildings that have a building automation system and basically understanding the building's operations through trending the interval data coming out of that system, set points, static pressure, all that kind of stuff like you would see in this little chart over here. So this short little webinar is to introduce the concept of the small building retuning, or this prescriptive approach, and we're going to give it in about 4 different sessions over the next several months, and we'll have that at the end slide here. But the prescriptive approach is really about, again, doing this, identifying these issues by walking through the building. So going to the rooftop, to the basement, inspecting various portions of the building, looking for what can be just corrected through maintenance procedures, or what could actually be optimized given the schedule of the building, which a lot of times the schedule of the building changes and no one really updates the controls for those settings. Again, the big distinction here is these buildings do not have a building automation system, or a very limited one, and so this approach is really using the equipment, some basic tools and equipment and knowledge from this training to optimize their building. And there's a lot of focus on rooftop package units because that's what we're basically dealing with in these kinds of buildings. The audience here is not so much the retro commissioning kind of agents or engineers. I mean, it is useful skills. A lot of the skills, they may be covered in other building operation type courses. So this small building retuning is really focused on the building operators and the service providers and possibly control vendors, the people who actually go in and out of that building and know its operation day in, day out, and are in charge of those things. The major areas of focus, really all the systems of the building, the envelope. A lot of times control or comfort issues come from just building envelope problems, like lack of weather stripping and air sealing, really cold windows because they're single pane windows, or lack of shades, and things that can be done to improve comfort as well as efficiency. All the HVAC systems, lighting and controls, service hot water, office equipment, and air distribution systems. I mean, typically these kinds of buildings have small distribution systems, and a lot of times they're poorly maintained or have a lot holes, ducts that are not connected. And the last piece is meter profiling. The course is mostly hands-on training that helps you do hands-on diagnostics, but also to look at the utility data of a building and understand what's its energy use profile look like, and use that same tool that P&L provides to help you determine savings from making these operational changes, as well as better understanding different scenarios for efficiency. So an example would be this right here. This is an example out of the eCam tool that P&L provides. And this is taking the interval data, if your building does have an interval data meter, and understanding when is energy being used. When is you can see this building is using 100 K, sitting around 100 kW every hour of the day, even at nighttime. Are there opportunities for bringing that down right there? Is equipment on at night that doesn't need to be on? Comparing weekday kind of profiles versus holiday and weekend profiles. What are causing these peaks? All of that kind of stuff can be done in this tool, and we'll go over some of that to help you, if you have access to that kind of interval data for your building, see these trends and understand, does that line up with the operation, with the schedule of the building? Are they coming in at 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock or not until 8? Are there opportunities for turning on equipment later? And just sort of something, I'm wondering how many people out there, how often do you encounter these kinds of problems, or are you even aware of these kinds of problems in your buildings that you operate or maintain? Or for you service providers out there, do you come across these issues? Economizers being broken in one way or another. This study that I just cited this from, found over 70% of the time, the economizers aren't working correctly. And a lot of times people don't even know, because if the economizer's not working, the cooling coil is still going to function and you're still going to get your cool air. So refrigerant charge, low airflow, things cycling on and off or cycling when they shouldn't be. During occupied mode, you should have the minimum air being provided at all times. Fans running unoccupied periods, we found that in many of the buildings we've gone through, simultaneous heating and cooling. So these, if any of these, if you've seen them in your building, this training is for you. We're going to learn how to identify them, how to correct them. If you've only seen one or two of these, most likely these do exist in the buildings you're going through, and there are low-cost, easy ways to correct them. Does retuning work? What's the evidence? There's been quite a few studies. Again, retuning is one form of retro-commissioning. It's really data-driven or process-driven streamlined approach to bringing your building back into correct operation. There are a lot of times the walking through the building and using the procedures to correct the operation of the equipment in the building will identify other needs, other capital-intensive needs, and that's great. That should be part of your monthly or quarterly process for doing this, and bring that to management to look at budgeting for that kind of stuff. But this is really about bringing back the operational efficiency to where it was supposed to be when the building was originally designed, or what needs to shift to because the building is being used differently and it's on a schedule from 10 to 6 now instead of 8 to 4. So understanding that, and this is where this training can really help you identify those opportunities. So in this example here, this is one study. They found about 15 to 20% savings just from taking the building through this retuning process, and they used the eCam tool to show whole building consumption, weather normalized, and this is interval data here, but they did the weather normalization analysis to come up with their savings. But before, you had a profile like this, and after is the red line. You can see hour by hour they're saving energy both during the daytime as well as the unoccupied periods. This is a huge savings during unoccupied periods. That's what we find a lot through this retuning process is there's plenty of things that are running that don't need to be running during the unoccupied times. So this training is going to be, we're moving this training to an online webinar format, and we would love your feedback either via the question panel, or I will unmute folks here in just a moment to give your feedback. We're looking at doing either 4 sessions, 2 hours each session, and having it alternating, like a Tuesday, Thursday one week and a Tuesday, Thursday the next week. So there's time in between each session, or making it in 1 week doing a Monday, Wednesday, Friday format for a little bit more time, like close to 3 hours each one. We plan to make the training interactive for the participants. We found this very successful in other trainings we've given online, where we give a small assignment, nothing huge. It's basically, hey, go take what we learned today, go out to your building, the one you're operating, or if you're a service provider, possibly one that you're working on the next day. Do you see some of these issues, and do you see opportunity for correcting them based on what we learned in the previous webinar? And then bring your findings back to the next webinar, and let's discuss them for the first 15, 20 minutes and get everyone's feedback. The webinars are approved for professional development hours, if that is important to you. I'm sure some of you probably need them. And the dates we're looking at we have scheduled. The beginning date of each session are here for the small building and the prescriptive retuning that I've discussed so far. And then the large building retuning, that's the data-driven one using trend data from the building automation system. That's also going to be provided as an online training in these dates. So are there any questions, feedback about the training? And we have, I'll go to the next slide. There's a web link here. I think you could also get to the web link from the registration page, but if not, you can copy this web link down to get more information about signing up, the price, etc. So any questions? No questions? Okay, well, I think we do have a question here. Unmute or type. Yeah, if you have a question, please do type it into the question bar. I'm actually trying to unmute everybody, and I don't seem to be able to. I guess I have to do it individually. There we go. 2 offices, 6 employees, can we group train? So one question is, they have 2 offices with 6 employees, can we group train? Matt, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but yes, you can. I mean, it's a web-based training, so because I'm not quite sure what you mean by that question, if you could clarify.
Hi everybody, I may just introduce myself. I'm Susan Mann. I work with Jerome. I'm the training manager here at PSD. If you have a large number of people in your organization who you might want to be trained, and the scheduled training dates that we have don't work for you, please do contact us. We are absolutely willing to talk to you about arranging a potential custom training where we could come to your site if that's preferable to you, rather than joining in an online sort of public open format. Also, for those of you who might live or work in New York State, there's some significant subsidies and discount for this training available through NYSERDA. But I do want to emphasize that this training is available to anyone. You do not have to be just resident in or living or working in New York State in order to access this training. It's absolutely anyone in the country. Or I know we have some people from Canada on today. Certainly anyone is welcome to sign up for the training.
The other question is, are you using modeling as part of this process? Funny, we do a lot of energy modeling using Open Studio and Energy Plus, as well as other tools. No, I mean, this training is really about the 2 trainings. I mean, the one I was just going over today is really the prescriptive approach, meant for the smaller buildings and meant more for the everyday, day in, day out building operators. And the large building retuning, that's data driven. That's not modeling, it's actually taking the trend data from the building automation system, taking usually 2 or 3 weeks of that data at 5-15-minute intervals, and plotting it and analyzing it with the PNNL ECAM tool to understand, comparing static pressure with the operational schedule and determining if that makes sense or not. We do have ways of modeling the potential savings for some of these improvements if that is of interest. Usually it's more applicable for the large building retuning process that's driven off of the trend data, just given the size and scope of the energy being consumed, as well as the complex systems that we're talking about adjusting their operations. If you're going to do a static pressure reset, it should, it's going to save energy. How much it's going to save? This course is not going to tell you how much it's going to save, but we know that, hey, you're up there at 4 inches water column. It's way too high for that static pressure, and it's being held constant all the time. You should have a static pressure reset in there. So that, hope that answers your question. But if you're interested in the modeling of these kinds of improvements, contact us and we can talk more about that. The other question is, what level of building performance skills and experience should the candidates have? I don't think you need, I've gone through this several times now, with PNNL, and given the skills aren't that advanced. Just basic understanding of this building stock. So we're talking about, a couple story tall small commercial buildings. Could be grocery stores, could be small offices. It's typically going to have rooftop packaged units or equipment. If you're comfortable, looking at, you don't need to know everything in about them, but you know where the filter is, you know where to look at where are the dampers, looking for the pulleys and things like that. I think that's sufficient. A lot of the skills will be taught in the training. Other questions? Well, as Susan said, if you're a New York resident, there's a large subsidy. It's about half of it, I believe, is paid back to you. If you're outside of New York, it's still very affordable. Check out the class, and we're going to be also delivering, like I said, the large building retuning training, which will be, it's more intensive, and for that training, you would need to know a good bit, not be super advanced, but you need to understand these large, air handling units tied into chillers and boilers, and some of the basics of those systems. Static, when I'm talking about static pressure reset, you've at least heard of those things before. You don't need to know how they work, but you've heard of some of those things before. It would be helpful to have those skills before taking the large building retuning training. And again, that's a training that's very specific for buildings that have a building automation system, and we're looking at correcting the operational issues, diagnosing the building with that data. And so someone from a staff member that knows how to get the data out of that system and or make changes to the BMS would be a good candidate for that training. Someone's asking about dates. The dates are on the website at this link that's shown here, but the dates are all, I'm just jumping back a slide. The dates are right here for, again, this is the starting date of the session. So if it's if we do it as 4 sessions, Tuesday, Thursday, 2 weeks back to back, the first one's going to start the week of July 15th. We'd love to hear any feedback. Do people prefer a 2-hour session, or push it a little bit longer and make it fewer days? At least for a small bit. The large building retuning is probably going to be a little bit longer sessions, like 4-hour sessions. The small building retuning will be 2 to 2.5 hour sessions, depending if we do 3 or 4 days. So if you have any input on that, what's easier with your schedule typically, we'd love to hear it.
And I realize we didn't put our contact details on here, but most of you, I think, get our training emails. You are always welcome to contact Lauren McFeely. She is our training coordinator, and ask and give any suggestions to her on your preferred format. We'll be locking down the session structure probably within the next week, and emailing that out to all of you. So if you have preferences, do let us know. And we will be putting this webinar up on our website as well. Jerome, we should probably just add in the contact details here on the last page of who to contact for more information.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? Then we'll wrap this up, and please do contact us. I guess. With that, I'll leave this up. If you want to write down this link again, you can go to the link to get more information on the trainings. And yeah, thank you very much for attending and for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And